So was the first robot in history actually built by a Greek god? Because of course it was. What do a bronze giant, Frankenstein, and Blade Runner have in common? Spoiler, Greece did it first. Did the ancient Greeks basically invent AI before Wi-Fi, electricity, or even pants with pockets? How do you kill an indestructible robot? Easy. Just add one clever woman. And can a machine have a soul? The Greeks asked that question long before Phillip K did. Welcome to Not Another Greek History Podcast, the podcast that aims to be exactly what it says. So before Blade Runner, before Frankenstein, before ChatGPT, the Greeks already built a robot. His name was Talos. And let's just say ancient Crete didn't need antivirus software. They had him. So welcome back to my podcast. I'm so excited about this episode because it will combine a lot of my favorite things. In one of my most popular episodes, we followed Europa's strange journey to Crete, carried away by Zeus disguised as a bull. Today, we stay in Crete, but this time the bull is gone and the island has a new protector, a man made of bronze, and his name is Talos. So Talos wasn't born like other men. He was actually forged, not born. Hephaestus, the god of fire and craftsmanship, built him as a gift for King Minos, Europa's son, as a request from Zeus to protect her after she arrived in Crete. Hephaestus, the god who made him, was the master of what we might call divine technology. His worship on Mount Olympus, nowhere near Crete by the way, it's on the mainland, it's very close to northern Greece in the region of Macedonia. It was full of self-serving tools, tripods that walked, and golden servants that could think. In that sense, Talos was the pinnacle of his art, the first living machine. He was an ancient robot before robots were even a dream. He had one single vein running through his body, from head to ankle. And in that vein flowed Ichor. That would be spelled I-C-H-O-R, if you want to look it up. Ichor, that's how we pronounce it. So not blood, but the golden life essence of the gods. At his ankle, a small bronze nail sealed it shut. What makes Talos fascinating is that the Greeks didn't see him as a mere automaton. By the way, automaton, machine, technology, android, all words from Greek. Automaton in Greek is pronounced автόματον. I always say this when you see a word that has an AU or EU, that is never pronounced as O. It's never pronounced as U in the case of EU. It always has an F. So auto, it's αυτό. For instance, also Eucharist, it's ευχαριστώ. Okay, enough with this, which might be confusing maybe for some of you. Αυτόματον, machine, mechani in Greek, technologia, technology, android, androides, from the word andros, which is the word man. So when you come to Athens, do not miss the opportunity to visit the Museum of Ancient Technology, which owes me big time. Tell them, if you ever go, that there's this guide called Onufrius. He always promotes this museum. He always tells people about it. Ancient artists and writers hinted that Talos could reason, that he had a sense of purpose and even emotion. In other words, he wasn't just a machine, he was a being with awareness. So this makes Talos one of the earliest expressions of a timeless human question. Can something we build have consciousness? Can metal shaped by hands contain life or even a soul? Now what did Talos do all day? He walked. 3 times a day, this giant made of bronze would march around the entire island of Crete. Anyone who tried to attack the island or escape it met a terrifying end. He would heat his metal body red hot and embrace his victims until they burned to ashes. Cretan hospitality apparently had its limits, but of course you will enjoy Crete if you ever go, and you should go. But like all great myths, the story doesn't end with an unbeatable hero. Enter the Argonauts. When Jason and his crew arrived on Crete after searching for the Golden Fleece, Talos stood ready to block their landing. But among them was someone even more dangerous. Medea, the sorceress, the princess that Jason met when he found the Golden Fleece in Kolchis, modern-day Georgia in the Black Sea. Medea didn't fight Talos with strength. She used words. She tricked him, whispered spells, and convinced him that she could make him immortal. As she enchanted him, she loosened the nail in his ankle, and the ichor began to pour out. The life drained from him like molten gold, and the great bronze guardian fell. That was the end of Talos, the first machine in mythology destroyed not by weapons, but by human cunning, and specifically destroyed by the intellect of a woman. What could this story mean, though? Some traditions describe Talos not as a monster, but as a mortal guardian who upheld law in Crete. Acting on King Minos' command, he traveled around the island's villages 3 times a year, carrying bronze tablets. Those had the city's laws to remind the people of their duties and order. What's beautiful about this story is how Greek it feels in every way. You have the genius of Hephaestus, the craftsman god. You have Europa's legacy living on Crete, protected by something born of divine art. You have Medea, the clever and dangerous woman who uses intelligence instead of brute force. And you have the idea of Ihor, the divine spark inside metal, a kind of soul for machines. Talos is more than a myth, though. Here's the first question about technology, as I previously said. Can something built by hands, even divine hands, have life or even a soul? In a way, this even reminds me of Christianity, where God creates the humans, practically makes them out of soil, and then he breathes life into them. Both Talos and Frankenstein's creature come from the same human fascination, the desire to create life, which of course comes from the idea of God creating life. And keep in mind, Hephaestus was a god who created life. Talos was shaped by divine hands from bronze, while Frankenstein's monster from the 1800s was stitched together from flesh by human ambition. And this kind of starts reminding me of Ed Gein, the killer. He didn't exactly do that, but yeah, there was a similar idea there. Both were meant to serve and protect, yet both became symbols of danger when the creators lost control. In a way, Talos is the ancient Greek version of Frankenstein's monster, a being made by art and intellect. His Ihor is the spark of life that parallels the electric charge in Mary Shelley's novel that was published in 1818. The novel's title is actually Frankenstein or The Modern Prometheus. It's all of that. The Titan Prometheus also bled Ihor, like Talos. Prometheus was the one who stole the fire from the gods and gave it to humans for them to be able to make more things, to craft things on their own as well, to create life in a way. But then, of course, the gods got really angry and punished him. So Shelley is really making a connection to Greek mythology in her title. And like Frankenstein's creature, Talos reminds us of the same timeless question. What happens when creation challenges the limits of its creator? This story is woven, by the way, in a very beautiful way in the very, very interesting TV series Penny Dreadful from 2015, a must-watch. One of the most compelling scenes from the whole series is a monologue of the monster played by Rory Kinnear. He says, "The monster is not in my face, but in my soul. Oh my creator, why? Why did you not make me of steel and stone? Why did you allow me to feel? I would rather be the corpse I was than the man I am." End scene. Incredible performance. I know you were blown away. You're crying. Sorry, I do that to people. I'm a very good actor. It is an incredible coincidence, by the way, that a new Frankenstein movie was released just today as I was recording this episode by Guillermo del Toro, this incredible director. If you're listening, by the way, of course, get in touch with me. He's the one who made Pan's Labyrinth, that is better known, The Strain, which I loved as well, and much more. So that's going to be a movie starring Oscar Isaac as Frankenstein and Jacob Elordi as the creature, it says, or the monster, as I said. So Crete, of course, remains full of these stories, bulls, kings, labyrinths, and monsters. And of course, that would be in Knossos, near Heraklion. You pronounce it always, Americans always tell me that, Knossos. Because, for example, when you say, I know something, for instance, it is a KN, but you say no. No. Okay? No. In Greek, it's pronounced. So it's Knossos. And the stress goes on the last syllable. It's a must-see when you go to Crete. Trust me, and don't do crazy things. I talked about this also on the tourist do's and don'ts when you come to Greece, another episode. Or I say, don't go to Crete for a day. It makes no sense. You never go anywhere for a day anyway, let alone Crete, which could be even its own country. It's the biggest island of Greece. Anyway, but Talos stands apart from all of those monsters and myths. Don't forget that he could move, think, and act, and maybe even dream. And I will get to that. In 1968, American writer Phillip K wrote an iconic dystopian science fiction novel which would be the basis for Blade Runner. The original title is Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? The incredible music for Ridley Scott's film was by Greek composer Vangelis. It was nominated in 1982 for a BAFTA and a Golden Globe as Best Original Score, but not for an Oscar. Vangelis had won the previous year for Chariots of Fire, which was indeed about runners, unlike Blade Runner, where no one runs. By the way, I do have an amazing Vangelis list on Spotify, so look for Vangelis, A Better Best. I will have it in the episode's description probably, but maybe some of you can't see it, or so look for it on your own if you want, if you're interested in his music. The list that I compiled is, trust me, really worth listening to. The movie could have been directed originally by Martin Scorsese, whereas Ridley Scott, could have directed Dune instead of Blade Runner. Another thing you might have not known about this is that the film's title, Blade Runner, has nothing to do with the novel. Not this novel, anyway. The filmmakers borrowed the title from an unrelated screenplay, which was based on a science fiction novel by Alan M. Nurse. The author was also known as Dr. X. He was indeed a doctor and even wrote books about AIDS. In the original 1974 book, a Blade Runner was a smuggler of surgical instruments. The filmmakers found the title compelling and purchased the rights. Elements from this novel are not present in the film Blade Runner, but some are in Minority Report, which also was adapted from a Phillip K. story. Those elements were not in Dick's story at all. Messed up, right? So in Do Androids Dream, Rick asked himself. Rick is the main character, of course. Evidently, that's why they occasionally kill their employers and flee here. A better life without servitude. The myth of Talos, Philip K. Dick's androids, and Blade Runner's questions about life and humanity all circle around the same timeless theme. What does it mean to be alive? You could say that Talos was the first Blade Runner story. Both Talos and Philip K. Dick's androids exist in that gray zone between mechanism and soul. They move, they think, they act, but do they feel? Dick shows us that the difference between human and artificial isn't about what we're made of, but about our ability to feel empathy, to suffer, to care, to understand loss. At some point it says, "Do you think I'm an android? Is that it?" Her voice had faded almost to extinction. This is when Rick is asking Miss Luft if she's an android. "I'm not an android. I haven't even been on Mars. I've never even seen an android." Her elongated lashes shuddered involuntarily. He saw her trying to appear calm. "Do you have information that there's an android in the cast? I'd be glad to help you, and if I were an android, would I be glad to help you?" "An android," he said, "doesn't care what happens to any other android. That's one of the indications we look for." Then Miss Luft said, "You must be an android." That stopped him. He stared at her. "Because," she continued, "your job is to kill them, isn't it? You're what they call," she tried to remember, "a bounty hunter," Rick said. "But I'm not an android." Back then, the film was nominated for 8 BAFTA awards, winning 3, and it was nominated only for 2 Oscars, art direction and special effects, but lost the effects at Steven Spielberg's E.T. It didn't win any Oscar. Philip K. Dick died, by the way, before the release of the movie, but he had seen scenes and said that it was exactly as he had imagined it. Though the movie initially polarized critics and didn't do well at the box office, now it's considered to be a sci-fi masterpiece. In a way, Blade Runner is a retelling of the story of Talos, just written in neon instead of marble, and set not in Crete anymore, but in futuristic San Francisco. And like the replicants in Blade Runner, the story of Talos ends with a strangely human moment: death. To answer the wonderful question of Philip K. Dick, for sure, a Greek android would dream of sheep. In a strange way, Talos is like an ancestor of artificial intelligence. Every new machine we build, every robot or AI system we test carries a little of the story inside it. The question of whether creation can ever be truly alive. The Greeks were asking that question before electricity, before science, way before even the Renaissance or even the Industrial Revolution existed. And they answered it in the most Greek way possible, with beauty, with tragedy, and with a warning. That perfection, even when forced by the gods, always comes with a crack at the ankle. It's a nod to Achilles, the Achilles heel, the only weak spot of the body. So next time you see a robot, a drone, or even an AI system, remember, the Greeks already imagined it, and they even gave it a name, Talos, the bronze guardian of Europa. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share. Until next time, this is Onoufiros Dovletis signing off from Not Another Greek History Podcast.